Hello everyone, this is Andrew. Welcome to Keen on America. On July 4th, 2026, America will be 250 years old. An anniversary that will, no doubt, be greeted with a mixture of celebration, contemplation, and resignation. In Keen on America, we talk to prominent US citizens not just about their country's past and present, but also about its future. What, I ask my American guests, will be the 21st century fate of their now venerable republic? Hello everybody, welcome back to Keen on America, the show in which I talk to prominent Americans about what it means to be an American. My guest today on the show is one of Silicon Valley's brightest young entrepreneurs, Josh Browder, the CEO of DoNotPay, and as always on Keen on America, I began by asking him to identify himself and tell us where and when he was born.
My name is Joshua Browder. I was born in December of 1996 and I came to the United States when I turned 18.
Josh, do you think of yourself as an American?
I have aspects of British culture and an American culture, hopefully the best of both.
What is the best of American culture in your view?
The best of American culture is ambition with no ceiling. I taught myself to code using YouTube videos from Stanford, and it was always my dream to come to America because the most ambitious projects get built here. At the same time though, people are so ambitious in Silicon Valley, it's almost delusional, and so I think British people are more substantive and focused on reality.
Josh, you come from a very unusual, a very distinguished American family. Tell me about your great-grandfather.
My great-grandfather was the head of the American Communist Party. He ran for president against Roosevelt, and he was fighting for the rights of the people during the Great Depression. So it was a very interesting time to be a communist.
Josh, let me just think this.
I could also make my answers longer if that's...
No, that's fine. Josh's name was, of course, Earl Browder. And
should I repeat it? Would say his name was Earl Browder.
Yeah, why don't you say that again? So you got my question on your grandfather. Perhaps make it a little longer.
Okay, sounds good. My great-grandfather was called Earl Browder, and he was the head of the American Communist Party, running for president against Roosevelt during the Great Depression. He was persecuted for being a communist during the McCarthy era and served time in federal prison. He was ultimately pardoned, and being a communist, he strongly believed in fighting for the people.
He was, though, connected with the Soviet Union, wasn't he?
He was very close with the Soviet Union, and he was handpicked by Stalin to run the American Communist Party. And there are a lot of historians that say that maybe he was sending information back.
He ran, of course, against Roosevelt from the left. Many people, many conservatives in America think Roosevelt was a bit of a communist. What was your great-grandfather's leftist critique of FDR?
Well, my great-grandfather's biggest belief was that communism and capitalism could exist at the same time, which was interesting because it upset the capitalists, even FDR, who's more capitalist than him, and it upset the communists, and he was actually kicked out of the Communist Party, and Stalin tried to take his life because of this ideology. So he was in a place where no one liked him.
Which is always, of course, Josh, the best place to be. Did your great-grandfather, and perhaps you know this or don't, did he think of himself as an American, or was he purely an internationalist? Did he have pride in being born in America?
He was more as an American could be. He grew up in Wichita, Kansas, organizing labor unions there, and it doesn't get more American than that.
He had sons. One of them was your grandfather, a very distinguished mathematician, who was also persecuted in the McCarthyite period. What was your grandfather's experience?
My grandfather was not very political. He was an academic. His name was Felix Browder, and although he wasn't political, because of who his father was, he was shunned. Just like in the Oppenheimer movie, he actually practiced at the Institute of Advanced Studies and other places, and because of his family background, he wasn't given the full opportunities to explore his career, and he was truly a genius mathematician.
How do you think the experience, not just of your great-grandfather, but of your grandfather and his family, how did that affect their sense of being an American?
Well, on the one hand, it was sad that they were held back because of their political beliefs. For example, my grandfather was drafted into the army, and usually there's a exemption for genius mathematicians not to be having to go to war and fight because it's not a good use of their talents. But the officer refused to sign his exemption paperwork because of who his family was. So the country let down my family in some aspects. But on the other hand, my grandfather was such a talented mathematician that he managed to ultimately pursue his work and get awarded the National Medal of Science from President Clinton. So it's really an American success story of overcoming challenges despite people trying to fight you and put you down.
Josh, your family, particularly your great-grandfather and grandfather, lived through a particularly paranoid period in American history. Some historians believe that defines America, paranoid. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Certainly. I think with my great-grandfather serving time in federal prison, it was a very charged environment, and they got him on passport violations, so very simple paperwork violations, and they used that as an excuse to put him in prison. And I think it's always a worry of prosecuting people that you don't agree with.
Your father is also extremely well known. Bill Browder, a very brave man, has just been knighted in the United Kingdom. He renounced, though, his US citizenship. Why?
I think given the treatment of my family, the UK was more of a new home for him, where he could start afresh without being burdened from these kind of political baggage from the past.
Josh, you were educated in the UK, grew up there in North London like myself, and yet you came back to the United States. It's a kind of odd return. Was there a degree of ambivalence in your return, or on your part, or perhaps on your family's part?
Certainly, my mother is a Northwest London Jewish mother, and typically she doesn't want her son going a long way away from her. But the opportunities here are endless, and it seems like in the UK there is a ceiling on achievement, particularly with technology. Perhaps it's because fewer people live there, or perhaps it's because the government and the culture view technology differently, but the biggest companies are in the US on the technical side. One example is one of the most successful tech companies in the UK is Deliveroo, which I think is like a Uber Eats clone, and it's worth a few $1 billion or pounds. But the most successful tech company in terms of valuation, I think right now, is SpaceX, which is hundreds of billions. So it's almost an order of magnitude more exciting and boundless in the United States.
Your great-grandfather ran the American Communist Party and the business of fomenting the revolution of the working class, of idealizing labor. You're in the business also, Josh, of rethinking the idea of labor. You're the founder and CEO of DoNotPay, one of the most innovative, dynamic, well-funded AI startups. You were around before OpenAI. Is there any narrative connection in your mind between what your great-grandfather got up to in terms of representing the working class and your business of replacing one kind of labor, human labor, with another kind, machine labor?
My mission is to give power to the people and help them fight back in their daily lives against big companies and governments. The very first use case with DoNotPay was parking tickets, because I believed that the government was issuing tickets first and asking questions later. Since then, we've expanded to hundreds of different features that help you get out of fees or get refunds from these big companies. And certainly, I hope that my great-grandfather would be proud of our work in leveling the playing field, because these big companies know that ordinary people don't have the time to wait on hold for 4 hours to save $50, and so they can charge a huge number of people and take their savings away.
I don't want to pretend to get into the head of Earl Browder. I don't know if that would be appropriate, but I'm guessing, Josh, that if he was around, he might be ambivalent, for example, with your relations with Andreessen Horowitz, the top VC firm in the Valley, who were one of your earliest investors. And he might call you aside into the corner and say, Josh, why do you want to make so much money?
When I started DoNotPay, it was a free public service and there was no business model. It didn't even require an email to sign up. And really, my mission was just to help people fight back. And it's a shame. These big companies can use AI and all these powerful technologies, but ordinary people don't have a tool, and so that's what I wanted to create. I ultimately decided to make it a company because I think that the biggest outcomes in society, especially in this capitalistic American society, are for-profit corporations. But I really did consider making it a non-profit. I only decided the for-profit route because I wanted to have as big of an impact as possible.
What professions do DoNotPay attempt to replace? Are they an AI lawyer, so that people won't have to pay anymore to go to their lawyers and they can not just fight parking tickets but all sorts of other violations through your service?
I want to level the playing field so that someone who needs help doesn't have to pay someone hundreds of dollars an hour to copy and paste documents. And there are a lot of amazing lawyers out there who do really good work, but there are some, maybe the ones you see on billboards, who really exploit people, and I'm trying to end that exploitation.
Do you think in the 20th century, Josh, that if there was a dictatorship, it's, in America at least, it was a dictatorship not of what your great-grandfather imagined, the dictatorship of the proletariat, but the dictatorship of a technocratic class of lawyers and doctors, and that's what AI can replace?
I think that it's a shame that the people who are writing the rules are the ones impacted by them. And there are so many rules in society who are created by people with not the best interests of the people at heart. So imagine that you have to some of these legal processes are stuck in the Stone Ages. And I think the reason for that is that a lot of people are making money from these outdated processes.
America, as you know, is an extremely divided country and an extremely inegalitarian one. It's always been relatively egalitarian, but today it's perhaps more inegalitarian than it's ever been in its history. Can AI and the promise of artificial intelligence, can that address that problem, or might it only compound it because young entrepreneurs like you are going to get very rich out of it?
Well, I think that it makes the problem worse for two reasons. The first is that AI is typically used for evil. It's used by criminals to steal people's life savings because they have a fake voice which pretends to be their grandson or granddaughter asking them for money. It's also used by large corporations. So imagine if your phone is on 1% battery and you open a ride-sharing app, it's more expensive because the AI model knows you're desperate, so it charges you more money. And then at the same time, it's replacing a huge number of people with technology and capital. So it's making the world more unfair with all these scams and fees, and more unequal. So we definitely have to fight fire with fire and use AI to fight back.
But aren't you an AI company?
Yes, but we work for our customers. We're not working for United Airlines or advertisers or anyone like that.
Do you think that technology broadly, AI and many of the other new, deeply disruptive technologies that are being pioneered in Silicon Valley, they can address the core problems in early 21st century America?
I'm a big optimist in technology. I think that the right technology will help huge numbers of people. Everyone will be able to have a tutor in their pocket, teaching them the education that previously only the rich could get. At the same time, legal services and therapy services and all of these things, which typically cost a lot of money, can be provided using software and technology. So I'm a big optimist, and that's why I think we actually have to accelerate the rate of AI progress, because every day that we don't, there are diseases that are not being cured and services that could be free for people that aren't being made available.
A lot of people believe that America is unique in the world because of its innovation, but it seems like there's a turn against certainly technological innovation, both from the left and the right in America. Does that concern you?
Yes, I think it's the biggest mistake of politicians to be anti-technology. Technology creates a world of abundance, and certainly there needs to be rules and guardrails, but ultimately we need to allow innovation to continue to prosper. And a lot of these big companies are trying to get regulations to make it harder for new startups and new companies to compete. So we always have to ask, what are the motives by these people and companies wanting more regulation?
So you fear regulation. Is there a role for regulation, Josh, particularly in the AI revolution? Some people believe that it could theoretically represent an existential threat, not just to America, but to the species, unless it's aggressively regulated.
You can't regulate human progress, and if we don't develop the best AI in America, then there will other countries that might beat us to it. And just because there are regulations in America doesn't mean that someone in a lab in Asia can't develop AI to do a lot of damage. And so I worry about excessive regulation. I also think that a lot of this is scaremongering. Certainly, being an AI entrepreneur myself, I see the limitations of the technology, and while large language models are very powerful, they are ultimately just statistical models. I asked ChatGPT a few months ago to add up some numbers, and it got the answer wrong. And so there does need to be fundamental technical breakthroughs to get us closer to an AGI world, and we're a long way from that.
Would you like us to get to what you call this AGI world? You might spell that out, what it represents.
I think it's a world where AI is everywhere.
And what does AGI stand for, Josh?
AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, where it's not just doing a specific task, but it's generally present and intelligent in helping us with our lives.
I always ask my guests when we do AI shows, Josh, this question. Given that the gap between humans and smart machines is growing closer and closer, how would you prove to me and our audience that you're human and not a bot?
I would say, I will tell you a human story, which is that I've been focusing on my fitness, and I'm proud to have lost 50 pounds, and I don't think a robot can lose weight.
Josh, you exchanged leafy northwest London for the battle zone of downtown San Francisco. You live on Market Street, down on 4th. There's almost a medieval quality now about downtown San Francisco. What do you make of the crisis of urban places like San Francisco, particularly San Francisco in America in the 2020s?
San Francisco is an amazing place because it's so boring that you can meet anyone. The only thing to do is work and talk about these ideas. So that's the positive. The negative is that the city government has failed to take care of people. They failed to enforce basic laws or have any sort of standards. And this has led to some really sad situations with homeless people. And I'm not sure if it's getting better or worse. I know there's a movement to bring back more policies to really help people and to get them off the streets in San Francisco.
Do you think that entrepreneurs like yourself have an obligation, morally in particular, to work with local governments, city governments? Some Stanford professors wrote a book 2 or 3 years ago in which you were singled out as a Stanford undergraduate because you felt that it was a victory to help your users avoid paying parking fees so that Palo Alto government wouldn't get those fees. Have you changed your mind on that?
It's interesting because certainly I'm a terrible driver and maybe I deserve my parking tickets, but a lot of parking ticket revenue is used to fund local governments. New York City alone make $1 billion a year from parking tickets, and I think that maybe that money should come from somewhere else rather than elderly people who make a mistake and things like that. But interestingly, when DoNotPay first launched, we went city by city, and a radio station, NPR, asked the head of the Los Angeles Ticket Bureau when we launched there what he thought of a service like DoNotPay. And he said he actually likes it because people write such nonsense in their parking ticket appeals that at least when it comes from a service like DoNotPay, it's standardized and easy to process whether it's legitimate or not. And so I think bureaucracy holds everyone back, and it can even help the people who are making money off of this decide more quickly how to process things.
Marx, when he was a young man, imagined a world without government. I'm not sure how Browder felt about that. But can technology make government redundant if we have more and more services like DoNotPay?
There's certainly a need for some small government, but it can replace a lot of government functions. I have friends working on startups where they're building AI politicians, where they're having someone run as a placeholder, but really the AI is making the decisions behind the scenes. I don't think these AI politicians will win anytime soon, but it's a very interesting idea.
Are you a utopian?
I believe, I'm not sure. I'm still deciding. I'm still young. I am getting old. I'm 27 now, but I'm still keeping an open mind.
Well, some people say that the older you get, the less utopian you become. Have you become more or less utopian in your 20s?
Definitely less. I've become less delusional.
What kind of world, if you wanted to be utopian, what kind of world can Silicon Valley technology create in the America of the late 20s and 2030s?
Well, it's interesting because you see these AI-generated images of the future of San Francisco, and it's these self-driving cars, clean streets, a world of abundance where everyone has housing and the services they need. And I think that technology does get us closer to those outcomes.
How much closer though, Josh? I mean, when you say closer,
so
does it make it realizable, or is there always going to be a distance between the ideal and the real?
Living in, when I lived in San Francisco, I think you get to witness the future. Driving in a self-driving car for the first time, talking with an AI robot on the phone for the first time. The future is really being built in San Francisco, and it is very real, the progress we're making.
What becomes of labor, Josh, in a radically automated world with self-driving cars? We're not going to have cab or Uber drivers and self-serving restaurants. There won't be waiters or perhaps even cooks. What are we all going to do in this AI future?
I'm much more optimistic. Humans have always found a way to do something useful, even in times of great disruption. So perhaps there are jobs today that didn't exist 20 years ago. If you think about the whole influencer category, working on digital marketing, all of these new industries that were created by technology. Also, the AI could create new jobs that we can't even imagine. Maybe it will create fake jobs in video games like Fortnite. So maybe you can work as a waiter in Fortnite that the AI tells us, and you get a real salary for that. And this is actually real. There's a, I think it's Fortnite or one of the games where IKEA is hiring people to work in the virtual IKEA. So I'm really optimistic about human creativity and resilience. Although I do think that there will be a lot of transition, and the government will have to retrain people to make sure that they're taken care of.
Do you fear, young people in particular, the generation or two, I know you've got a younger sister, the generation or two after yours has been saturated and in some ways undermined by technology? The Surgeon General in the US recently argued that social media should come with health warnings. There's a best-selling book entitled the Anxiety Generation, or the Age of Anxiety, suggesting that young people's lives have been, mental lives at least, have been undermined by a saturation, an addiction to technology. Do you fear that?
I worry that technology has made the world much more competitive. So when I was growing up, you didn't see these crazy stories about these like 9-year-olds on YouTube making millions, or these people selling all of this stuff. And so I think being exposed to that on TikTok and Instagram really stresses a lot of people out. Also, there's an amazing article by my friend John Lutig, which says that in the olden days, you didn't really see the lifestyle that other people lived. You could just see your neighbors and maybe friends, but now you can see the lifestyle of everyone. You can see the people partying in Italy right now, and that's very stressful for a lot of people. I would love to be partying in Italy.
What do you think your great-grandfather would think of a world in which labor unions are much less powerful, or that we have a new class, not the proletariat, the precariat?
I think he would be horrified by how things have gone, but I hope he would be amazed at some of the progress we've made in terms of technology.
Josh, you're a Silicon Valley insider, CEO, founder of a prominent startup. What do you make of some of the tech Silicon Valley initiatives of founding communities, particularly in Northern California, outside San Francisco? Do you think that is a reflection of the problems of our age, or a way of actually addressing them?
I think that San Francisco is still the best place to build a tech company, despite what the press has said. And the reason for that is having everyone focus on the same thing creates this sort of energy that moves things along. On the other hand, though, life outside of technology is terrible in San Francisco. You go to a party and someone will say, "What do you do?" And if you aren't working in AI, they'll just leave. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think different people prefer different things.
Do you feel, as an entrepreneur, somehow quintessentially American, even if you were born overseas?
I definitely am not a full American. I don't understand American football. There's still some of the cultural things that I think is a bit excessive. Like, I go to a diner and the plate is way too big, and everything is just bigger and excessive here, and sometimes it gets a bit too much.
Has that changed, though? I mean, hasn't that always been the case?
I think that with social media, it's gotten even worse, because now you see all. You
mean the portions are larger now with social media, Josh?
Really, they are. There's a meme going around right now where if you film your Chipotle, they give you more food. This is a real thing, a real trend going around. So yes, I actually do think the portions are getting larger.
So if you're on a diet, you probably shouldn't go to Chipotle, or you shouldn't be on social media.
Yes, they have a policy where if you take out your camera and film, they actually will give you more. So the portions are really getting bigger.
You've manifested, though, agency in losing all that weight. Is there something about human agency that's also uniquely American? The idea of seizing your life, of reinventing yourself, of losing 50 pounds, of starting again, of doing another startup?
Yes, and that's what's amazing. In Silicon Valley, you're only as good as your last product and what you're doing and what you're working on. And there's people who maybe 20 years ago they made a lot of money or they did some investing or something, but they're not considered interesting. What's interesting is the AI engineer building the future.
Is AI, though, sometimes, in your view, overhyped? Is it for real?
I think it's underhyped and overhyped at the same time. It's overhyped because AGI is a long way away and AI doesn't really reason that much today. It just predicts the word that's going to come next. It's underhyped because there's amazing applications that haven't been built that could really save people a lot of time.
But if we do get to what you call AGI, then what?
Then I think we need to focus on what makes us human. In a world where everyone is intelligent and everyone has knowledge, the thing that will matter is human connection. So a lot of things where good human connection is required won't be replaced. So maybe hairdressers or waiters and waitresses or real estate brokers, where it's all about connecting people and building lasting relationships.
So then what becomes of the doctors and the lawyers and the engineers, the backbone of 20th century meritocracy, who will in many ways be replaced by this AGI?
They can work on video game law for the virtual courts in Fortnite.
In all seriousness now, Josh.
I think there'll be a lot of retraining, a lot of refocusing, but society has a huge number of problems and people will shift to work on those new problems.
So they'll become what? Social workers? The old lawyers and doctors and engineers will become social workers on the streets of San Francisco, where you live in downtown San Francisco?
I think AI will level up what humans can do. And my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I really hope that in my lifetime they come up with a cure to Alzheimer's. And so there's a lot of doctors who might work on those problems and many others that are facing us.
Josh, in a couple of years, and I'm sure you'll still be in America, America will be celebrating its 250th anniversary. Is this a day that we should be celebrating?
Definitely. I think the values of America when it first started in terms of the First Amendment and freedom of expression and things like that are still true to this day. And even what I'm doing with helping legal documents be available to people, the foundation of that is with the First Amendment, where you can build something and scale it up to help people.
So what needs still to be worked on in the American narrative? What would you like to see improved between 2026 and 2076?
I think it needs to get less hysterical. I worry that there's been an increase in tension and it's only increasing, and maybe there will be a revolution in my lifetime, and that would be very damaging.
But could a revolution be a good thing? You're the great-grandson of Earl Browder, the head of the American Communist Party. He might be turning in his grave at the promise of a revolution in America, finally.
Hopefully the problems don't get that bad and we can find a way to unite people on the things that we all agree with, like fighting robocallers with DoNotPay.